Welcome to Count It Off with your host, Jeff Dayton, where we explore the world of music through the eyes of some fascinating guests. So, get tuned up and let's count it off.
All right, welcome everybody. Jeff Dayton here, Nashville, Tennessee, career music guy, and talking to the people I know and love talking to. The show has been growing steadily. Thank you for your support. And this week we're between guests because Nashville got hit with an amazingly intense snow and ice storm. It's still out there. You should see it. I'm sure you've seen it on the national news. The trees are all glistening like crystal fantasy creatures. And the thing is, though, that all the weight of all that ice on the trees is snapping off great big branches, limbs, and sometimes the whole tree. And so we are between guests right now. We had a couple people scheduled to come in and do the show. So I thought it might be kind of fun to do a little bit of a story time thing, and see if you guys would like to hear some stories about people I've worked with and been around some. I wish I could talk about, the Beatles. That would have been a big one, or even Jimi Hendrix. But all right, we're going to start out today with a few stories about folks that I've worked with or met or hung out with or whatever the story is. First one up is Bo Diddley in about 1981. And I was in a band called the Dayton Privet Band. And Mark Prentice and Tom Sawyer and I, bass player, drummer, and guitar player, got hired to back up Bo Diddley for the Maricopa County Fair. Not the Arizona State Fair, which wasn't far away, but this was on Van Buren or so, something like, 24th and Van Buren. And we were out there on this, basically just a dirt lot is where they had the fair. And we're there in the afternoon. We've been waiting to hear from Bo as far as what to play and what we're going to set up and what the set list is, what key the songs are in, any of that stuff. We hadn't gotten any tapes ahead of time to study. And up pulls the limousine, and it's Bo Diddley's limousine. He gets out, and he's wearing all black like it's showtime. This is in the afternoon. And he gets out of the car. He's got on the black, shirt and jacket, black shoes, black pants, and that big bowler hat and the huge black sunglasses. And he comes over, he looks at me. He looks at Mark. He looks at Tom, and he goes, "Y'all look like you can play. I'm going back to the hotel." And that was it. That was the whole rehearsal. And we're standing there looking at each other like, what on earth just happened? So we get to the show that night, and I think we did an opening set. And then Bo comes on stage with no instructions and starts playing. Looks at me, he says, "Play." And that's how it started out. And every song was that way. He'd set something up, and we did our best to keep up with him. God, that was a lot of fun. And that was Bo Diddley. It got better and better as time went on. We opened for Alabama and the Judds and Merle Haggard in 87 with the Jeff Dayton Band. And we opened for Alabama at Symphony Hall in about 82 or 83, I think it was, when they were just playing smaller rooms like, Symphony Hall in Phoenix. We had so many cool gigs like that. We backed up Dionne Warwick at Gamage Auditorium, I believe it was, at Arizona State. And it was Mark and Tom and me, and I think a couple of other guys, and a singer named Gary Copen who got us in on the gig. And Dionne Warwick was great, and I didn't get any instructions. None of us really were told what to do or how to behave or anything like that. And I'm walking down the hallway, and the green room's open, and there she is. And I walked in, and I said, "Hi, Dionne. Yeah, it's nice to meet you," blah, blah, blah. And then I found out later she had given implicit instructions that nobody is to look at her or talk to her. So, again, old Jeffro put his foot in his mouth, but that's the way you live and learn, pretty much. Another guy I really loved meeting was Guy Clark. And I was in the shuttle, he was here in Nashville. And back when parking was affordable at Nashville Airport, I think it was $3 or $4 for the long-term parking, the economy parking. It was across the road to the east from the airport. And you could ride a little shuttle bus out there, and I'm sitting on the shuttle bus, head out to my car, having come home from somewhere. And there's a white-haired guy next to me and an older couple across from us, and that was it. And it was a older guy looks over at the guy next to me, and he says, "I know who you are. You're Harold Shedd." Well, Harold Shedd was the guy who produced Alabama and had the music mill there at the top of Music Row. And the guy next to me goes, "No, I'm just Guy Clark." And the guy across the seat pulled his hand back, like I don't want to shake your hand. And I said, "I'd rather talk to Guy Clark." One of my heroes. I mean, he really had a magical way of writing songs. Just like Rita Ballou, what a great song that was. You Got Your Heart Broke, New Cut Road. I mean, some of my favorite Guy Clark songs. You know, it was one of those things, you know, where I met a legend, and I wish I'd had more time to talk. But all the way out to our cars, we got talking about his career, and he wanted to hear about Glenn Campbell and all of that stuff. So that was a pretty cool event right there. Back in, I think it was 85 or 86, I was living in Phoenix, and I came to Nashville to pitch my songs because George Strait had recorded Any Old Time in 1984, which really launched me as a songwriter, and I got a lot of doors that opened thanks to that. And I was playing songs for all the publishers that I would take time with me, and Marty Gamblin was there with Glenn Campbell Music. Now, I hadn't met Glenn or didn't know anything about him, except that, of course, he was famous. But I hadn't ever run into him, and Marty was in the basement of the Music Mill, the building that I just mentioned that Harold Shedd owned that produced Alabama, all those big hits. And it turns out, small world story, that Glenn Campbell's song Lady Like You, which was his final country music #1 record, was recorded right there at the Music Mill. And Marty was downstairs in a room that walked right out to the street with a little canopy and a little apron. And I used to get to go in there and see him. I called him up one time and I said, "Hey, Marty, it's Jeff Dayton." And he goes, "Hey, Jeff, I really haven't got much time. I'm real busy, but why don't you come by for about 5 minutes right before lunch? And we get together for a few minutes." And I got down there and we started talking. And about 1:15, he goes, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" That was how cool Marty was. Great guy. I miss seeing him, you know, just really, really straight ahead countryman. He's from down there in Mississippi. And I was there one day and there was this tall drink of water and lanky legs like mine, you know, with cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. And he goes, "Jeff, this is Alan Jackson. You guys should write together." And I was like, "Do." I didn't follow up on it, nothing, because he hadn't had any hits yet. And boy, do I regret it today, because the first thing that happened is my friend Mark Irwin got to write Here in the Real World with Alan, and that was the one that really launched him. So that was a kind of a cool little event. What do you do when you meet a pop legend? Back in 2008, we had just launched Black River Music, and I was signed to Black River as a writer, and Sarah Darling was the first artist they signed. And we had a whole bunch of songs together on her first album, and I had gotten to play on the whole record. It was so much fun. Jimmy Nichols was the producer. And I think Joe Carroll, our East Coast promotions guy, who I love Joe, if he's listening, hey, Joe, man, we got to catch up. Love seeing you and talking to you, buddy. They had a big launch party for the label, and the label still is owned by Terry and Kim Pagula, who are the people that now own the Bills and the Sabres and have been one of the major donors for Penn State. And they wanted to do a big first-class launch party. So we were at Sambuca down in the Gulch. And this is before the Gulch got it as busy and as hip as it is. And the whole place was ours for the night. It was very, very cool. And there was a guy rolling custom cigars. I was not a cigar guy, and people that have good cigars say, "Don't let Jeff over there and waste our good stuff," because I don't smoke them. But Frank DiLeo was there. Now, Frank DiLeo was from the Cleveland area, and he was the head of Epic and Mercury Records up there, CBS or whatever you want to call it, all of those labels up there. And he was doing a new venture, Frank DiLeo Enterprises, in Nashville. And he was going to sign new talent and work with developing talent. And so he had an office here, and he was invited to the party. I think he was in L.A. by then, but he had moved to Nashville with this particular branch. This is in not long before he passed away, which is sad. He died in 2011. But I was introduced to him during the party, and Jeff. He called me Jeff for the rest of the night. Never forgot my name. Jeff, how you doing? Hey, Jeff, come over here, talk to me. Hey, Jeff. All right, I got to jump in here and tell you guys a story that I have forgotten to tell you, and I didn't want you to miss this part. We were talking about his career and how he took over Epic Records. He was Michael Jackson's manager. He was Frankie Sharp from Sharp Records and the Wayne's World. He had a huge career. And he said that when he was running CBS, he went to an office of one of the other guys at the label, and there were a bunch of VHS tapes. Remember those old videotapes? bunch of tapes of other artists that were on the guy's desk. He said, "What are these?" And he said, "Well, those are rejects. We're going to throw those out." And he goes, "Give them to me." And he took them all into his office, and he came back a little while later, and he said, "All right, we're going to sign these two. This one here, Adam Ant, and this other one, Culture Club. I like this Boy George guy. We're going to sign him." Where do you get these stories, huh? And at one point, he says, "Hey, Jeff, go over there, get a cigar, get your girl, meet me on the rooftop." Well, this is the guy who played one of the main guys in Goodfellas. He was one of the gangsters in Goodfellas. And he was also Frankie Sharp from Sharp Records in Wayne's World. You remember the big guy that shows up at the limousine and signs the guys to a record deal? So this is who I was thinking. It was more like Frankie Sharp for me. And there I am on the rooftop of Sambuca with a cigar with Sarah Darling, who's also got a cigar. It might be the last time either one of us had a cigar in our hands. And Frank DiLeo, just the three of us. And I told my late brother-in-law, Jerome Contro, who's Italian as could be, about that. He goes, "Man, you had a cigar with Frank DiLeo? The paisans that break legs to get to do that with me." I said, "Yeah, pretty cool event, though. I was pretty thrilled about that one." You know, one of the things about being a good musician in a town is you get known for certain things, and our band, the Jeff Dayton Band, was doing really well. After Glenn had hired us, everybody wanted us, and we got calls from corporate events like Dean Witter. I'll never forget Jim Higgins, the head of Dean Witter, and he was very fond of our band. And thanks to our pal Mark Felix out in New York for always booking us on these jaunts. He called me up one time and he said, "We need you in Hawaii, and here's the money. It's black tie. Everybody come on over, and we're doing it at the Grand Wailea on Maui." And we got over there, and the Grand Wailea was very Tony, let's just put it that way. I mean, they had booked, Dean Witter had bought out the golf course for the entire week that they were on property so that nobody could play golf there except Dean Witter and their guests. And their main guest was President George Bush and Barbara Bush. Well, the fun thing is we had been to the White House, and we had met them. And I'll tell you that story in a minute. And we were over there, black tie, having a great time. They put us at the Maui Prince because that was only $450. The Grand Wailea was $850 a night. And they had a black tie dinner, and there's banquet tables around a dance floor. And we are up there, the JDB, and Noel Kirkland was with me, the late, great Noel. And his late wife, Tracy, was with us too. And she was so excited because we could bring spouses if we wanted to. And Tracy came up to me and said, "We've never been anywhere but New Mexico. I'm going to kiss you on your bald head." God bless her. There we are playing, and one of the people from the party came up and said, "Hey guys, can you stop singing?" Well, first they asked us to play quieter, and we said, "Sure." And then they said, Can you stop singing? Because it's making people want to dance. We're like, "Okay." And then they said, "Can you play quieter and don't sing because we're afraid that people are going to bump into the president?" Well, right about then, President George Bush gets up from his table, and he walks over to us, and he sticks his hand out to me, and he goes, "Hello, Jeff. Hello, boys. Good to see you. Say hi to old Glenn for us." And I swear I could hear jaws hitting the floor all around the room, all the people that were going, "He knows that they know, but whoa, that is so cool." I'll never forget it. I'll tell you the White House story here just in a second. Hope you're enjoying this. It's fun to tell stories. And we were just, I think, pretty new with Glenn because I remember Bob was there, and Bob played with us till 91. So it was sometime between 87 and 91. I think it was on the early side. We got invited to play the White House for 2 shows, 2 nights. And we were on the South Lawn. And I might have told this story once before, but if I have, forgive me, because my kids flashed 2 fingers at me like, "You already told us, Dad." The event was on the South Lawn, and one night was for the congressional delegates, all the congressional members, and the other was for foreign dignitaries. And I think it was the dignitaries the first night. And we're out there in the afternoon, and I remember Stephen Ford being there for some reason with one of his children. And we're setting up outside, and it was a warm day, June, I think, and we're inside the White House property. I mean, it was amazing to get to do that at that time. And we're setting up, and it's getting warm. It really was. And we hear this voice from the patio on the second floor of the house. You boys look hot. Would you like some lemonade and sandwiches? And it was Barbara. And she sent down all these wonderful little finger sandwiches and lemonades for everybody. I remember when she called down and Bob said, well, yes, we would like that. Bob Hinkey, the late great. God, too many people are late great. I miss people that aren't here. This is happening too fast, too often. And we had a great time. And Barbara was like Aunt Barbara. I've never been so warmed by someone of a place like hers, a station in life such as she had, that would be so welcoming and so kind and so inclusive. Each night, the president would get up towards the very end of the concert, maybe right before Rhinestone Cowboy or something. And the president would get up to make some remarks. Well, in those particular days, Glenn stood front and center. I stood to his right, and the other guys stood to the left and right of me. And so President Bush came up, and he took the center spot. Glenn stepped left. Barbara was to his right, and I was to the right of her. So she was between the president and myself, and he would make remarks, and she would turn and remark to me. And he said, oh, it's a beautiful night. And she'd turn to me and go, isn't it a lovely night? And I was like, we're having our own private conversation here. This is really cool. I honestly felt like she was going to say, well, why don't you boys come into the kitchen after you're done? I have some cake and pie left over from last night. Would you like some? That is how wonderful she was. You know, the Beach Boys were great to us over the years, too. I remember the first time we met them was at a show, I believe it was in Avila, Indiana, where we had a night off, and Arvel Bird was really famous up in that area, and he got to open the show for us in Fort Wayne. And then the next day, we heard the Beach Boys were up the road in Avila, and Glenn said, who wants to go see the Beach Boys? And so Johnny Barafato and I got on the bus with Glenn, and we went up there. Of course, Bill McClay was on the bus with us, our road manager. Got up there and got to hang out with them, and we're just having a blast. And then when the encores come and all the cheerleaders from the Beach Boys show come on stage, just as a daytime show at the racetrack, and they're all dancing, and the Beach Boys get jamming, and they waved Glenn out. They gave him a guitar, and he came out and played lead guitar on all the encores. And Bruce Johnson on the keyboards waved to Johnny Barafato and myself, and he waved us out to come out to his position. So Johnny's playing piano, and I'm singing, and we're doing the Beach Boys with the Beach Boys. It was so cool. I just remember that. And I asked Glenn on the way out of town, I said, how is it that Bruce Johnson was in the band and you weren't? And he said, well, they got a lesser player who was a nicer guy. I never told them that, but I'm sure that Bruce Johnson didn't mind being one of the Beach Boys for the rest of his life. The other thing is we ran into El Jardine in Monterey. We were getting off the plane, their little plane. I think we were flying in for an IBM date, if I remember correctly. And he said, hey, who wants to come down and see my studio? And he had a studio down in Big Sur. And so Tom and Bob and I, Tom Benton on drums, Bob Hinkey on bass. He's gone now, I mentioned. And we hopped on a rental car. I think back then we used to get all Lincoln Town cars. That was Bill's standard. And we would get them from budget. That was how it went in the days. And we went down the coast, and we went down to Al's studio in Big Sur. I remember that drive along the coast was just something else. And it was kind of like one of those places like Neil Young's Barn from the Harvest album, if you remember the back cover. Back when there were albums and they had back covers with credits and pictures. And there was a guy that was giving tours of the place to us, and I think he was either French Canadian or French, and I think his name was Francois or something like that. It's such a cool thing. And Tom and Bob and I were just like, plug everything in and hit the red light. We want to record. It was very, very nice. And then later, Al came out. Al was into Arabian horses, and North Scottsdale in the 80s was ablaze with Arabian horses. I mean, everybody had a horse. Kenny Rogers had a horse. I mean, it was the you know, kind of the she thing to do. If you had money, you had owned some Arabians. And we were playing at, I believe, Adams Arabians, and our special guest was El Jardine. And so we're doing all of our Beach Boys stuff with Al. Only the thing is, I had to laugh. He goes, you guys are doing these all in the wrong keys. These are too low. None of my parts fit. But he told me that day, the reason the Beach Boys wore white pants and striped shirts was that the Kingston Trio had worn white pants and striped shirts, and they wanted to be like the Kingston Trio. That's pretty cool. My dad was a huge Kingston Trio fan. He was a guitar player, weekend warrior, played Dixieland music, but he loved the Kingston Trio, and I always pictured him being that guy, Dave Guard, that was the first one that passed away, the guitar player, and I always thought my dad looked like him and could have been a Kingston Trio. The fun thing is that years later, I had a chance to produce the Kingston Trio for the Mary, Arizona project for UCP in Phoenix. And I brought them in to do a song for the album, and lo and behold, they were just a hoot. It was still Nick Reynolds, the little guy, and Bob Shane, the big guy. And George Grove was the new guy. He was the banjo player. He said, I've only been here 20 years, so I'm the new guy. And Bob walks in, Bob Shane, and about 11:30 in the morning, and he and Nick Reynolds are both holding tall Colt 45 cans. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And he goes, if these don't work, I'm declaring it a marijuana session. And I was like, please, please let the Colt 45s work. It all worked out, though. That was all right.
We'll get back to the conversation after this short break.
Yeah, I want to invite you guys to take a second and send an email if you like the show, if you've got suggestions about future topics, future guests, things you've heard, things you'd like to hear. I'd love to hear from you, and the email address for Count It Off is radiojeffro@gmail.com. Once again, radiojeffro@gmail.com. Shortest ad in history.
And now, back to the show.
All right, having fun yet? I'm having a blast. I tell you what. We got hired to do the band for the celebrity golf tournament KNIX used to put together in Scottsdale. And they had, 15 different artists. And everybody, it was Lisa Brokop and Matt King, two people that you might not even have heard of. Tracy Lawrence, Tracy Bird, Jeff Carson. What a sweet guy he was. We've got a song together I wish I could play for you guys. Maybe I will at some point. And so many other great people. And both years, John Michael Montgomery was the headliner for the first 2 years we did it. And the third year, it was Clint Black. So I had a chance to play with all those guys. But I think my favorite of all was the first year when Toby Keith was there with Michael Peterson and just a lot of great guys. Mac Davis, Steve Cropper, Gary U.S. Bonds. And we're playing a couple songs with each one of them. Well, the story I like to tell, Toby is just great, and we did Should Have Been a Cowboy, and I forget what the other one was. And but the way that happened was Michael Peterson was supposed to be on, and he wasn't anywhere to be found, and they were like desperate, like, where's Michael? We can't find Michael, and everybody's drinking, they got a cigar going, it's in a tent, it's like one of those golf tournament type of vibes. And they went up to Buddy Owens went up to Toby and said, hey, I'm sorry to do this, but we can't find Michael, and would you go on? And Toby says, no way. So they wait. I don't even remember this might have been while somebody else was already up there. And they finally went back to him and said, we can't find Michael anywhere, would you please? And he goes, all right. So he came up on stage and killed it, man. And we did our 2 songs with him. And then just as he finishes, oh my gosh, in the back of the tent, Michael's here. Here's Michael Peterson. Michael's here. And Toby's having none of that. As Michael came up on stage, he crossed in front of Toby. And Toby took both his hands, which are some hay baling, strong, farm boy hands, and grabbed Peterson by both the glutes and just squeezed him like grapefruit. And hoisted him right up off of the stage and said, you ever do that to me again, and I'll kill you, and like one of those things. And it just put the fear of God into him. Well, the funny thing is I did a show with Michael Peterson in Nashville years later, not even that long, well, maybe, 10 years later. And he came up to me, he goes, man, I don't know what happened in Scottsdale. I mean, I didn't, and I was like, Toby's message was still ringing loud and clear, and that's something. I tell you what, come on. Let's talk about country music. You know, we've known the Gatlin Brothers for a long time. The first time was touring England with them, touring the UK actually. Channel Islands, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and of course England. Jolly old England. And we had a blast. And the first night we were going to play, Glenn decided that in being the TV star that he was, he knew that you always have your guest star for a song towards the end of the show as a special nod to your guest stars. So he and the Gatlin Brothers got to talking and said, we got to figure out a song to do. And somebody came up with El Paso because everybody knows El Paso, right? Really? No, everyone does not know El Paso. And we proved it. We were in Reading, England at the Hexagon, which is just east of London, a couple hours. And my gosh, they got up there and we got about a verse and a half into it, and pretty soon the wheels are falling off and everybody's saying different words, and Glenn's laughing and the Gatlin Brothers are laughing and the crowd is bewildered because they don't know what. Are we staging this thing? So it was a total wreck. Totally a wreck. Well, fast forward to years later, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, actually near Aurora, playing for a benefit called Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, or TAPS. And I'm there with the Gatlin Brothers and myself and a couple of hit writers, including Frank Myers, who wrote Just You and I and a bunch of songs like that. He also wrote this little song called I Swear. Not bad. Anyway, we decided, I called Rudy and I said, let's do El Paso and we can call Glenn. And so Rudy typed out all the words. It's 14 verses long, El Paso is. So it's, it's human to not know all the words to El Paso. We get up there on stage, and it's Larry Gatlin, Steve and Rudy, and myself, and we're going to do El Paso. And Steve's got all the words, Rudy's got all the words on 3 sheets of paper. And we called up, I said, Glenn, I called him on my phone and said, hey, Glenn, it's Jeff, and we're in Denver, and I got the Gatlin Brothers, and we're going to do El Paso. And Larry literally grabs the phone out of my hand. And he goes, Glenn, this is Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin Brothers, Larry, Steve, and Rudy. Larry Gatlin. And he goes, we're going to do El Paso. And I heard Glenn say, well, good luck with that one. so typical of Glenn. Well, we had the words and we're sailing along, and somehow, somebody tripped on their shoelaces. And pretty soon we are nowhere near home base, and everybody's laughing and the audience is laughing, and pages are flying out of Rudy's hands in the air like Craig Ferguson tearing up his notes for a guest, and we're about to die another ugly death. And out of the crowd, in his trail leathers, head to foot, was Michael Martin Murphey, and he came up on stage, and doggone it, he had the words, and he brought it home like a pro, and we finished right there, slid safe into home. And Michael Martin Murphey, thank you so much for being the cowboy artist you are. We love you. Late 80s or very, very early 90s, Glenn Campbell called me and he said, Jeff, we're doing a show at the Century Plaza Hotel for Gene Autry and Pat Beltram, and it's a black tie event, and Willie Nelson is going to be there, and he doesn't have a band. Would you guys mind being Willie's band? And I said, whoa, not at all. Now, here's the thing. We had played Willie's music. All of us had played Willie's music since it was on the jukeboxes in the 70s. And the early 80s, and it was everybody wanted to hear On the Road Again. Everybody wanted to hear Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. We called it Two Guys Flying in a Plane. We were over a lot of that. I mean, over it because we were just trivial band guys from a cover band, playing bar gigs. But we got to the Century Plaza Hotel, and Willie and his entourage, a small entourage, he brought Mickey Raphael, the harmonica player. He was there, and we walked out on stage, and they had Willie's guitar, Trigger. It's the one it's a Martin N20 is what the model is, and it's got that extra hole in it. And he's got a Baldwin amplifier, which is solid state, and nobody even, you might have heard of Baldwin pianos. Well, they had a guitar amp. And it was so unreliable that the road manager told me that they would buy up every Baldwin amplifier they found on the road and take it with them so they'd have spare parts. That's what I'm trying to say. And Willie started playing. He gets the guitar in his hand and he goes, down, 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 down. And all of a sudden I went, what is happening? he's playing on the road again. He's playing that famous guitar lick. Ding, 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 ding. And I'm going, oh my God, that's the sound. That's the guy. This is the guy. And as I tell you this right now, I can feel the hair on my arms just standing up. I was playing with Willie Nelson, and none of those tired old songs, I don't care what it was, Sioux City Sue, I mean, you could name it, they were brand new again, and I absolutely cherished every minute of it. Well, we had been booked, Kenny and Ron and Arvel and I, Ron Bertowski on banjo, Kenny Skaggs on mandolin, Arvel Bird on the fiddle, and myself on the flat top, and we got booked, and Bob Henke, and Bob had his Guild acoustic bass, and so we were doing what we called a stroller, which is unamplified group, and we would just walk around a cocktail reception area, go table to table, and play a song for folks. And that was fun, but it was black tie, so I had on my tux. And here's the other thing, I was so tired from the month before because my daughter Carrie had been born in late 87, and so this is about late 88, and she's still a baby. And I'd come home, I was subbing for Ray Herndon in the Herndon Brothers, and he was getting ready to go out on tour with Lyle Lovett, and they didn't have his replacement, who was Dwayne Riston, who is still there today. I'm going to see Dewey next week. And so I was Jeff Herndon for a whole month, and the deal is you play 9 to 1, and then 2 nights during the week you stay, or maybe it was Tuesday to Saturday, that was it. And 2 nights, like Tuesday and Thursday, you'd stay late and work on new songs. So I was there till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 of the nights for the whole month. And I'm just dragging tail, you know what I mean? And I got home and my wife Debbie says, okay, you're home, here's the baby. It's like, I'm about to fall over already. She goes, nobody ever died from a lack of sleep, but I was positive I was going to prove that one wrong. And so a month of that, and then off we go. We're on our way to Australia, and our first stop was Los Angeles to play this date with Willie Nelson. And so I was wiped out already. This is like, I just can't wait to get a whole night's sleep. And we finished our strolling set, and the rest of the party's going on, and they're having dinner, and it's Angie Dickinson and James Garner and all these big Hollywood types. And Gene Autry's there, Pat Buttram's there. I mean, it's Gene Autry's Western Heritage Museum. It was a big fundraiser for it, and I know it did well, just looking at the crowd. So I decided to slip upstairs after that strolling set and just lie down for a second, and I think I took off my jacket and my slacks and something like that and just fell back on the bed. And the phone in the room rang. This is before cell phones. And it was Tom. He's like in a panic. He goes, everybody's down here and we're going on in 5 minutes. Where are you? And I'm like, oh no. And I jump up off the bed. I've obviously fallen fast asleep. And go racing down to the elevator, and I'm pulling my pants on the, that whole scene on the elevator. You know the picture. Go racing down there, and it's just about showtime. I made it just in time. And we walked out, and we're on stage. And so our band did a quick thing. Glenn did a set. And then it was time for Willie Nelson. And they go, ladies and gentlemen, Willie Nelson. And we're all excited about Willie Nelson. And it's like, ladies and gentlemen, and only 5 times bigger. And we are like, there's no Willie. And everybody's looking around, and the crowd is going nuts. So they try again, ladies and gentlemen, Willie Nelson. And no Willie. We looked all over, there's no Willie. And what seemed like 5 minutes later, the doors to the alley, the double doors, like fire doors, popped open. And there was the entourage, road manager, tour manager. They're wearing those, remember back when they did tie-dyed satin jackets for rock and roll bands and stuff? And they're wearing their Willie Nelson family thing. And in comes Willie and Mickey Raphael on harmonica. They walk up on stage. And the stage manager, or whatever he was, went to get Willie's guitar cord out of the back of his amp, and somebody had rolled it up in a ball, and it looked like a cat had been playing with it. It was just this knot of cable, and they couldn't get the thing untangled, and so finally they got about 2 feet out of one end of it, you know what I mean, and there's a ball in the middle, about 3 feet out of the other end of it, and they plug it into the amp, and Willie starts to play, and there's no sound, just the acoustic sound of the guitar. And they tried everything, and the road manager went over to the amp, and he turned every single knob up to 10. Well, that's one thing you don't do anyway, but he did it. And Willie looks over at this, and he's just as completely calm and happy, you know what I mean, that kind of herbal happy that Willie always is. And he looks over at the amp and he goes, "Oh, you got it in the wrong hole." And he pulls it out of the foot pedal jack and he plugs the guitar into the guitar input. And of course, everything's on 10 and it's just feeding back like crazy. And that was that was the beginning of the show. We had such a good time, though, and Willie was just amazing to play with. And at the end of it all, we got to do something I don't know how many people can say. We got to sing Back in the Saddle Again with Gene Autry and Pat Buttram. That was pretty darn cool. So, guys, I don't know what to tell you, but to me, that is pretty darn sharp, you know. We've been so blessed with different things to do. I really, really appreciate y'all, though. And I have so many more, but I feel like I'm just wearing you out here. So I'm going to bow out of here with this story time thing. Oh, yeah, look at the time. It's time for dessert. Guys, again, I want to make sure that you know that I appreciate you. I love how this show is starting to grow. And I want to ask you again, if you would please, go ahead and send your comments to radiojeffro@gmail.com. That's radiojeffro@gmail.com. And we will take those and get those in. I'd love to be able to, feature your comments or play your suggestions. If you've got an artist you need me to know about, let me hear about it. And all the good stuff. And I want to thank you for listening tonight. This is our show between the shows. And I think for another episode, if we get iced out of another guest, I'm going to put something together about what is real country music, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of new people that are really bringing, as I've been known to say, putting the hair back on the legs of country music again, and I'm really excited about that. So y'all take care, and thanks for listening, and we'll let Magic Marcia and my pal Dave Sandler take us home. Here we go. That was the wrong one. You're watching a professional at work here, folks.
That's not it either.
Lord God.
Bye, everybody. Hey, baby.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this show. We invite you to check out all the other episodes and share this channel with all of your friends. Until next time, peace.